This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, Winnipeg? Let's do this. Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. And lots to get to today coming out of last night's NHL Draft Lottery. Big game in the Western Conference playoffs, and of course, a huge announcement regarding our Winnipeg ICE in the WHL Championship Series beginning Friday here in Winnipeg. We're going to be all over it. Brian Munz will join us from the ICE. We'll get the latest on the move of venue for the series that begins on Friday here in the PEG. We'll also talk to Mike McIntyre. We'll get to some Jets off-season talk, certainly get his thoughts on the upcoming ICE Championship Series against the Seattle Thunderbirds. And then coming out of last night's draft lottery, we'll talk Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, and some of the top prospects in this June's NHL draft with Chris Peters of Flow Hockey. Chris has his first mock draft out now that we know where everybody's picking. So we'll talk about some of the top prospects and certainly get Chris's take on the ICE and T-Bird series that begins coming up on Friday. Should be a great show. Great to have you all with us. If you haven't already, hit that red subscribe button if you're with us here on YouTube, and give a thumbs up to today's episode if you wouldn't mind. It certainly helps us spread the channel here on YouTube. And for podcast listeners, if you do have the opportunity, tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk, but give us a little 5-star rating and review. It's another way to help get the word out on what we're doing here at WST. Greatly appreciate all the support everyone gives us on a daily basis. Speaking of support, we can't do it without the great sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. From Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Breezy Bend, Aikens Lake, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Consolidated Supply, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, F Apparel, Assiniboia Downs, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health Fresh Market, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Aquatech, and Modern Man Barber Shops. Let's get right to it. Munzie coming up, Mike McIntyre and Chris Peters on a packed show. Michael Remis, what is up? How you doing?
Good. I'm feeling good, Huss. It feels like we've turned the page here from, wrapping up the Jets 22-23 season. We've turned the page. We're in off-season mode. The draft lottery was last night, and that was very, very intense. I'm still on a bit of a high from that because that pick can change a franchise, and it was quite the spectacle last night right before that Oilers-Vegas game. So I'm doing okay. It's nice out today, Huss. Great weather in Winnipeg, and we're kind of in off-season mode. Bombers starting up. What's the other one? Sea Bears, Gold Eyes preseason.
Gold
so
Eyes?
A lot,
you're
going
right.
On.
I mean, listen, it was a disappointing end of the season. It was a pretty crazy 4 or 5 days coming out of the Jets' final game. But we are into the National Hockey League offseason for more than half the league. The Jets are part of that group. And, the next few weeks, I would imagine, should be quite interesting as to, what the Winnipeg team does when it comes to, the players that we've talked about repeatedly with expiring contracts at the end of next season and some big decisions, and I'm sure some big conversations happening behind the scenes. Just though before we get to the draft lottery, I mentioned this right off the get-go today, and this is just huge for the Winnipeg ICE, and I think for hockey fans here in Winnipeg. The announcement yesterday, a little while after we got off the air, that the Western Hockey League Championship Series was going to be moving from Max Bell and Wayne Fleming Arena at the Ice Cave to the Canada Life Center downtown. And I wasn't sure whether this was even going to be possible. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure about the previous relationship between the owners of the Ice and the folks at True North. And obviously, it probably was a non-starter as long as the Manitoba Moose were in the playoffs. But with the Moose losing that heartbreaker in Game 5 against Milwaukee, I imagine that, the rink was available, and it just made too much sense not to make a deal like this happen. So, I mean, that was the big news yesterday, Reem. Tickets went on sale today at noon. So whether you're listening to this live with us on YouTube or whether you're listening to the podcast on the way home from work or a little later on, tickets are on sale now. Friday night's game is 7 p.m. Saturday night's game is 6 o'clock p.m. We'll talk about it coming up with Brian Munz, but it seemed like, it was going to be such a shame if this series, which of course also includes Jets first rounder Brad Lambert playing for the visiting Seattle Thunderbirds, it would have been a real shame if this was limited to the very small capacity of the Ice Cave at Wayne Fleming Arena. A huge win for all parties involved, especially Winnipeg hockey fans that I think are in for a real treat on Friday and Saturday at the downtown rink.
Yeah, we heard about the crowds in Saskatoon for some of their games and other, big crowds around the WHL, and you get kind of jealous that we only have the small capacity here for the Winnipeg ICE. And there were people asking us, hey, if the ICE get the WHL Championship, is there a chance they could play at Canada Life Center? And I mean, I had no idea. I don't make those decisions, but with the Moose being out now, they definitely had some openings, and it was nice to see they were able to work out whatever agreement they needed to. And I don't know, are these games going to be shown on TSN as well? Because there's some, they have some consideration with the Canada Life Center being set up for broadcast Jets games already. So I think this is just a win for everyone. And hopefully the building is packed like we've seen at other WHL and CHL rinks around Canada. And it should be a great series as well with two top teams trying to get to the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this with Chris Peters a little later on and certainly get Munzy's take on everything from an ice perspective. These two teams are stacked. They've been on a collision course for the better part of the entire season, and now it's a best-of-7 beginning Friday here in Winnipeg for a WHL Championship and a trip to the Memorial Cup. So, I kind of echo it. I mean, this is a win-win for everybody involved. Certainly, this is be huge for the ice, with the ability to sell plenty more tickets. I'm sure it makes sense for the folks that at True North that own the arena that will be having some more butts in seats for games that unfortunately didn't happen for either of the pro teams in town. And the bottom line is, I know there's a lot of questions about what's happening with the ice in the future and, will they be able to get the rink that, was sort of planned when the team moved here from Kootenay? No idea about that, and those are probably off-season conversations that I'm sure we'll take part in. Right now, though, it is about the championship series, and a heck of a lot more Winnipeggers and Manitobans are going to get a chance to see this series now that it is up at Canada Life Center, beginning with Game 1 and 2, and then Game 6 and 7. I would imagine, and I haven't checked the schedule, but with it being Winnipeg and Seattle, pretty much the longest possible travel available in the Western Hockey League, I would assume we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, but we'll confirm that with Munzy when he joins us a little later on. Bottom line is, get your tickets now, make some plans to get out there and see the Ice and T-Birds play for the Western Hockey League Championship on the weekend. But the big story last night, Remo, outside of the local story with that announcement, of course, was the NHL Draft Lottery. And by now, I think pretty much everybody knows the Chicago Blackhawks are on the clock with the number 1 pick that will certainly be Connor Bedard. But what everyone was talking about last night was a bit of a snafu in the broadcast, if you will. Like, I know Kevin Weeks likes to break news, and he is the People's Insider. Not sure the league wanted him letting everyone know that the Columbus Blue Jackets were picking 3rd before Bill Daly had shown the card.
Yeah, and, to quash any confusion out there, the draw is done in a closed room an hour before the TV broadcast, and Frank Saravalli was there and wrote about it. They have the video on NHL.com, who Stephen Wino wrote an article as well, a report for Canadian Press, Associated Press. So the draw is done, and they want to present it in a way that maximizes suspense for the TV broadcast on NHL Network. And there was, so they're counting down, okay, 14, 13, 12. and they get to 4, and they're like, okay, we're going to commercial break, and I don't know what happened, but Kevin Weeks revealed that Columbus was going to have the 3 pick, meaning 2 or 1 were definitely Anaheim or Chicago, as they went into commercial break, and Bill Daly didn't reveal the card. So I'm watching at home saying, wait, he just said Columbus was getting 3rd, but they didn't show the card. What's going on here? And I think this has been the premier lottery, talking about this one for a couple of years, the Connor Bedard lottery. And, people are tuning in. You want to find out if you're going to get the pick. I know they're, those teams, Columbus, Anaheim, Chicago, had the best odds. They're all fired up about it. For them to have that kind of a screw up on their big lottery. I mean, and look, I screw up here pretty much every day. So I don't know if I should in a spot, but this is national TV. This is the biggest night. That's a big blunder. And I don't know if they blame Kevin Weeks or a producer involved, told him the wrong thing. But it kind of ruined it. I think it caused a lot of confusion when you were watching it, and also took away from whatever suspense there was. But I think more importantly, people are like, "What?" I think it confused a lot of people.
It certainly hooked people in for the commercials in between that break because people, as I said, weren't really too sure exactly what was going on. And I was talking to a few friends that are heavily involved in production last night about it and just how that possibly happened. And I mean, we don't need to get too inside baseball here, but I do believe that most of this stuff was essentially recorded at the NHL HQ and then delivered to ESPN and Sportsnet as the broadcasters. And there was obviously a mistake in the order of some of the items that were being delivered. The Weeks hit, speaking of the Columbus pick, should have happened after Bill Daly showed that 3rd card. So, listen, the bottom line is this was about who was getting the number 1 pick, and it certainly took a little bit away from the drama, if you will, and that would have been a really sour way to find out that you were picking 3rd if you're a Columbus Blue Jacket fan last night. But once we got over the way that it was delivered by the National Hockey League on their respective broadcast partners, Remo, Connor Bedard's going to be a Chicago Blackhawk. And I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I kind of said yesterday, I mean, for the league, this probably would be a great landing spot for Bedard as far as maximizing his star power. He goes to an Original Six franchise in a great sports town. Obviously, there's a lot of people that, because of the way the Blackhawks handled the Kyle Beach situation, probably felt that they probably should have lost a couple of first-round picks and maybe shouldn't have even had the opportunity to pick in this draft. That is obviously not the case. And from a Jets perspective, a Jets fan's perspective, excited to get a chance to see Connor Bedard more than once a year. Not that excited about the prospect of a Connor Bedard team led in the Central Division being there in the playoffs for the better part of the next decade or two.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing. Just on the draft, you see people saying, "Oh, Chicago got it. It's fixed league." Here's the video that they put on NHL.com. So how it works is what they put in 14 numbered balls, 1 to 14, and there's 1,001 different combinations of 1,001 different combinations of you can get of 4 numbers, and they pull out the 4 balls in 20-second intervals, and whoever has that combination gets the pick. So it wouldn't be great on TV, but watching this at NHL.com, very cool. And we had said yesterday, Chicago was our pick to not get it for the reasons why they handled the Kyle Beach. The big tweet yesterday was, New Jersey got docked a pick, first rounder for their Kovalchuk contract, which was legal at the time. Arizona got docked a pick for working out draft eligible prospects too early. Seemed like Chicago didn't really get much of a
They got punishment. A $2 million fine. They sold $5.5 million of season tickets last night.
Yeah, so I think for that reason, it's disappointing that Chicago, especially because, look, they just had a run of 3 cups, and you had Kane and Taves, and now it's restarting again. But for the NHL, I mean, this is probably the best place for Connor Bedard to go. Hockey, the hockey mad place, original 6, history of success. So I mean, it works out great. Sucks for Columbus, who seems to be left out of these frequently. Anaheim still gets a very good player in Adam Fantilli. Detroit is the team has had some bad seasons and hasn't really been rewarded from the lottery. We want to see him to go to Detroit. So I think, and then the other part is, he's going to play for Chicago, and we're going to be seeing him a lot here against the Jets, which I guess is good or bad because Crosby and Ovechkin were on, we're in the other conference, so we didn't see them a ton. So I guess good or bad.
Yeah. I mean, just strictly, and I'm sure from a business perspective for the Jets, having, a player and a young superstar like Bedard in your division will probably help at the gate. But as I said, I mean, just thinking from a competitive balance, I mean, putting a guy in that, is mentioned in the breaths of some of the great players that have entered the league in the past 20, 30 years, having to deal with him and his team that has all of these picks that could be very, very good in a few years, maybe not the best scenario. But yeah, from a league perspective, the fact that he's in the Central Time Zone, playing in a big market, I think is good for the league. And I was with you. I mean, we kind of kicked it around yesterday, basically talking about Chicago, Philadelphia. I thought would have been an excellent landing spot, and maybe that would have been a little preferable for having him in the East. Detroit as well, an original 16 that's sort of been on hard times, that has a great history as well. And I was personally pulling for Columbus because you'd get that East. And I think the Columbus Blue Jackets fans, I mean, it would have been really nice for them to finally have something go their way when it comes to this sort of event. But the ping pong balls have spoken, and it is the Chicago Blackhawks. And, in a lot of ways, Remo, this is going to be fascinating to see how this team moves forward with all of the draft capital that they've acquired last year, this year, and next year. This was, when we talk about rebuilds, this was a scorched earth rebuild. Everyone is gone. They did everything they could to get to the bottom of the league. Of course, the Ducks did manage to lose 13 in a row to finish off the season, and they were actually third chance. But they smiled on the hockey got smiled in Chicago, as much as that might anger a lot of people. And Connor Bedard is going to the Windy City, and that is going to be the big story at the first pick in draft in Nashville. But part of the other intrigue about this draft, Remo, is that it is so deep, and we'll talk to Chris Peters about this a little later on. It's so deep that even if you were picking in the middle of the top 10 or lower down, there's still real quality players. Maybe not a Connor Bedard or an Adam Fantilli, who's sort of the quote-unquote consolation prize to the Anaheim Ducks. But there's more than just a couple franchise players in this draft from what we hear.
Yeah, and it seems like if you're picking in the top 5, you're going to get a very, very strong player. If it's Leo Carlson or Will Smith, Matvei Michkov, there's a lot of very good players, and good players, even lower down. Zach Benson, who'll be on the, playing in the WHL Championship with the Winnipeg Ice. So there was so much intrigue about the lottery, and I agree with you. The way that Chicago tanked, so shameless as well. I mean, we talked about taking away a pick for the way they handled the Kyle Beach situation, but the obvious shameless tanking was insulting to fans of the National Hockey League, and to see them get rewarded, that just, I think, encourages more tanking. Although, Anaheim tried their best too. They still got number 2. They're going to get a very good player as well, Adam Fantilli, but this blatant tank, you're like, why is Chicago trading away Alex DeBrincat? Shouldn't they be rebuilding around him? Well, I mean, it seemed to work out pretty well for them. So I think that part is disappointing. I think it's disappointing too.
Yeah, well, I mean, a certain commissioner told us that teams don't tank.
Oh, yeah, no, I guess I'm wrong then. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Too much competitive integrity in the National Hockey League to have teams that tank. Yeah, we all know what the truth is. And hey, one team was going to be had a big smile on their face. It's Kyle Davidson and the Blackhawks. Not so happy for the Blue Jackets, who drop out of the top 2 and end up picking 3. And for the Ducks, and as miserable season they had, and that 13-game losing streak that I mentioned to end the season, they don't get Bedard. They do get Adam Fantilli. Pretty darn good spot. As I said, Chris Peters has a full mock draft up at Flow Hockey of the first 16 picks that were announced yesterday of the non-playoff teams. we'll touch on that with him, and we'll also get his thoughts on the upcoming Western Hockey League Championship Series as well. And I guess we'll find out where the Jets are picking probably, well, maybe as early as tomorrow, because the Toronto Maple Leafs are not playing tonight. They face elimination tomorrow against the Florida Panthers. And the Panthers, ironically enough, were the only team that finished with less points than the Jets that made the playoffs. The Panthers were 92, the Winnipeg Jets were 95. But if the Panthers advance past this next round, they will jump the Jets and pick later than Winnipeg. So we'll, in all likelihood, be talking about a 17th overall selection once Florida takes care of the Leaves.
Yeah, assuming that they do, right? You don't think Toronto's going to have a 4-game comeback?
I doubt it. I mean, listen, that's why they play the games. It's not over yet. But I think, well, let's just say it's highly likely that the Florida Panthers will be in that Final Four. And who knows even whether the Leafs can win that game tomorrow. Well, as I say, we'll have much more on this. Looking forward to Mike's takes on all of this, a little more on the Jets offseason and the ICE series coming up. And we'll talk draft and WHL final with Chris Peters a little later on. The draft lottery was the appetizer, though, Reem, because last night the main event was just one game, and it was in Edmonton. And the Edmonton Oilers got off to a great start again. It wasn't Draisaitl or McDavid, weren't Fogle scoring early on. But what pushback from the Vegas Golden Knights. We saw it in round one against the Winnipeg Jets, and Edmonton felt it big time last night. Just a real dud from the Oilers and a dominant performance by Vegas, including Adin Hill coming in after Laurent Brossoit was injured. He was perfect on the night, and for whatever reason, I don't know about you, but it felt like that series was 2-1 going into last night's game. I don't know whether it was the long break or just how thoroughly Edmonton whooped Vegas in game number 2. But this series is most definitely on right now, and the Vegas Golden Knights are halfway to moving on to the next round after last night's game.
Yeah, it did feel like Edmonton was.
It was all Edmonton,
Did they get credit for 2 wins? In game 2 might have been the time change. I always enjoyed the anthem in Edmonton too. Everyone singing along and giving them maybe a goal for that. But you thought Edmonton, here we go again. Edmonton scoring early, and Vegas, as you said, great pushback from Vegas and even more pushback from the team after losing Brossoit, Adin Hill coming in, and I haven't seen who's going to be the starter for game 4 for them. I'm assuming it'll be Adin Hill again, but credit to him for stopping 22 of 22. On the Edmonton side, Stuart Skinner, he had the bad game last round where Campbell was pulled where he was pulled and Campbell's put in again yesterday. White Cloud walks in and pops one, Jack Eichel as well. So he gives up 4 there, and they had to bring in Campbell. So I wonder what they're going to do. I think they'll still go with Skinner. He's been the guy. But disappointing to have that game. And it's so crazy in the playoffs where, these teams are so good, are so tight that you have a game. Vegas dominates game 1. Edmonton dominates game 2. Now Vegas takes game 3. What's going to happen in game 4? And you even saw that in the New Jersey-Carolina series that goes tonight. Carolina looks like, how are they going to be beaten in games 1 and 2? And then in game 3, New Jersey puts up 8 goals on them. So it just shows you the swings of these series. And we talked about what's Jack Eichel going to look like in the playoffs in round 1. That was a big topic here, and another great game for him with a goal and 2 assists yesterday.
Yeah, Eichel had a great game. He's sort of been up and down throughout these playoffs, and I mean, it was no contest between Vegas's best players and Edmonton's best players in game number 2. But listen, they stepped up. What?
Every time it's like, Vegas had the pushback. Their best players way better than Edmonton. We're just going to be saying that for, I think, years, hey?
Hey, well, listen, you know why it was said and why it resonated so much? Is because it was true. And it was a very simple way of explaining what happened in a particular game. And I will use that explanation for last night, and that the Vegas guys stepped up and made things happen. And I mean, it was a very strangely quiet game for Connor McDavid. And Draisaitl had a few great opportunities early on in the game, but was unable to capitalize for finally something not going in for Leon Draisaitl. That being said, Wednesday night, tomorrow, huge day with the Leafs playing and then the Oilers playing. So a big night for Sportsnet, that's for sure. So we'll get both Canadian teams in action. We'll touch these games tonight, Jersey, Carolina, Dallas, Seattle, a little later on the program. But we're going to talk ice, as we mentioned right off the top of the show. WHL final, moving to Canada Life Center. Brian Munz joining us in just a second. Do have to thank our great friends at Modern Man Barber Shops, now open with 8 locations in Winnipeg. Had a great time on Sunday at the grand opening of the new location on Pembina Highway, right close to Bishop. Also be having a grand opening for the new Plessis Road location coming up in the next couple weeks. Modern Men Barber Shops offer a variety of grooming services, haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Find out more online or book your look and an appointment via modernmanbarber.com and give them a follow on Instagram at Modern Man Barber Shops. We are going to get a little taste of summer later on this week. And while it is spring right now, get ready for summer and make 2023 the year you take the plunge. Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. The Aquatech team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. And with thousands of home renovations as their foundation, let Aquatech upgrade any space in your home. If you're looking to finance, their team can provide plans that suit you. And with Mother's Day coming up on the weekend, folks, give mom the ultimate staycation destination this Mother's Day with over $1,000 off select spas, pools, and home rental projects. Plus, visit them on Instagram and enter to win mom $1,000 towards a she shed. I'm speaking of getting outside and golfing. How's your golf cart looking? Of course, you can get them at Consolidated Supply, but Manitoba Battery celebrating their 10th birthday with incredible savings, getting you ready for summer with blowing out golf cart batteries for everyone that, uses their carts on the courses or from bombing around to lot at your summer getaway. Right now at Manitoba Battery, 6-volt golf cart batteries are $167, 8-volt golf cart batteries are $177, and those prices include free delivery anywhere within city limits. And when you return your cores to Manitoba Battery, you get another $17.50 off what's already the lowest price in Manitoba for golf cart batteries. Get them now so you can be ready for May-long weekend and summer fun. The sale goes up until May 6th. Pop down and see him at 1026 Logan Avenue or check it out online at manitobabattery.com. And a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. Bomber training camp beginning this week, and it won't be long till we're cheersing each other up by the Rum Hut and join CC, and of course the CC and Ginger Ale in cans. You don't have to wait, though, for Bomber games to get your hands on the CC and Ginger. It's now available in 473 milliliter cans at Manitoba liquor marts and beer vendors around the city. All right, we got playoff hockey coming to downtown Winnipeg. Great news late yesterday that the Winnipeg ICE Seattle Thunderbird games are going to be played at Canada Life Center, so more Manitoba hockey fans can get in and see what should be an incredible final. The voice of the Ice, our pal Brian Munz, joins us now from Ice HQ. Munzy, championship week is here. How are you?
Hey, I owe you, first of all, for reminding me it's Mother's Day this weekend. So sincerely, thank you. Hey, everything's awesome. We know who the opponent's going to be. It was quite the series between Seattle and Kamloops, and the Blazers gave them a run, but the Thunderbirds finished it off last night in Game 6. So I think it's kind of the one that everybody was expecting to see just based on the regular season, the way the two top teams finished atop of their respective conferences. And here we go on Friday night.
Well, it is going to be phenomenal. I think anyone that's seen the Ice play throughout the year or through the playoffs knows that, and followed the league, knows that this is somewhat of a collision course of the two best teams, and we've got it. But the best news, Munzy, yesterday for local hockey fans was the fact that this arrangements have been made to have this series at Canada Life Center. And I imagine for the organization, it's huge. For the players, they deserve to have big crowds considering what they've done. This sounds like a real win-win-win for everybody involved. And what a great venue that's going to be to pack as many Ice fans in on Friday night and Saturday night here downtown.
Yeah, guys are excited about it for sure. Obviously, they've been to a number of Jets games and Moose games on some off days. And, a lot of these guys dream about playing in that building one day with an NHL contract under their belt. So it's a sneak peek for them to have this opportunity. And, yeah, huge thanks, obviously, to everybody over at True North for making it possible. And, we're excited about it. It's a great opportunity to, put a larger footprint on junior hockey here. Obviously, the Ice Cave inside Wayne Fleming Arena is a fantastic venue. It's so intimate. Rink dimensions are a little bit different, so the Ice maybe have a bit of a home ice advantage during the regular season. But I think by the time you get to this point and having gone through all the different games that they have, they can kind of take their game anywhere. And we're excited about this weekend for sure. When you break down the rosters, you look at the two sides, all the potential NHL players that are here, it's really a great opportunity for fans to get a sneak peek.
How, I'm not sure whether you were privy to any of this, but I imagine there'd been a lot of work going on behind the scenes on the possibility of making this happen because, moving a series, and even though I knew, probably a lot of it had to do with whether the Moose were still playing in the playoffs, and obviously, Unfortunately, they lost on Friday, but a lot of people working behind the scenes to make this happen and get a big win for the team, the organization, but also local hockey fans.
Yeah, those offices are bigger than mine. So I agree with you that, there is a lot of work that was done to get it to where we are right now. And I was down at the other office. I'm at the Rink Training Center right now where the team just wrapped up practice here in the last 90 minutes or so and going through all the different media requests that we have both on and off the ice right now. It's been a busy few days, obviously, now that we know it's Seattle and in conversation with the Thunderbirds, getting them set for when they come to Winnipeg too. And again, I know in the quick conversation I had at our business office this morning that everybody's kind of locked and loaded here. So there's no downtime leading into Friday night at 7 for sure for anybody involved. And again, it's just great to have the opportunity to head down there and play in a venue like Canada Life Center is. You and I have spent a lot of time in that building over the years.
Oh yeah,
it's fun to get back down there for sure.
Well, and for such a big series and a big game between two incredibly talented teams. Just before we start talking more about what the Ice have been doing to get ready for the series and your thoughts on the matchup, as far as hockey fans need to know, first things first, tickets are on sale right now. They went on sale at noon today. So whether you're listening on the podcast or you're with us live or even later on YouTube, you can get to that link. Hit the Ice website. We'll retweet it out as well and get on that. Just quickly, and I'm not sure how much info you have on this, but they had already sold basically a full building for both games. Any idea about how that's working with folks that already had tickets for games to make sure that they've got their spot front and center for the games on the weekend?
Yeah, so that's a big part of it right now. Obviously, anybody that had purchased a ticket that was planning on going down to the Ice Cave for Friday and Saturday, someone from our office will be in touch as the day continues on. And I know there's been some digital communication that's gone back and forth already. So, stay tuned for that. If you haven't heard from somebody here over the next day or so, make sure you reach out and we'll get you locked in to guarantee that you've got a seat coming up inside Canada Life Center. But, for as low as $25, you can get a ticket to come watch the WHL Championship Series here presented by Nutrient. So you can't beat it. There's obviously anywhere you go inside the building, there's different price values. So you can go onto the Winnipeg ICE website right now at winnipegice.ca, and right on the top of the page, there's a spot for game 1 or game 2, and click the game you want to come to. Hopefully you'll come to both and get a chance to watch some great hockey this weekend. But again, all the details are on the website, and we'll look forward to having everybody down there.
Munzie, has there been a full series schedule laid out yet? We knew that games 1 and 2 were going to be here. And there was some speculation. Are they going to go 2-3-2 with the incredible distance between the two cities? Fill us in on the rest of the series.
Yeah, so the schedule got released late last night. It was about 11:30 when the Seattle and Kamloops series came to an end. So games 1 and 2 are here in Winnipeg, obviously, at Canada Life Center that we've been talking about. Friday night at 7, and then Saturday night at 6. We're going to bump it up an hour to make sure we get lots of kids and families out there to take advantage of a Saturday night, and you're back home by 8:30, 9 o'clock. So it's fantastic for them. The way it works in the league final is the Western Hockey League charters a plane, and both teams jump on the same bird, and we'll make our way out to Seattle on Sunday. Teams will have a practice day on Monday, and then, like you alluded to, it is a 2-3-2. So games 3, 4, and 5 will all be played in Seattle Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. I don't know the travel plans coming home. I would assume we'll stay overnight and then fly back on Saturday. And then games 6 and 7 are coming up on the following Monday and Sunday, Monday. So all the schedule and everything's on winnipegice.ca, but it is a 2-3-2, and it should be a ton of fun.
Well, there you have it, folks. There's the schedule, but what you need to worry about right now is getting your hands on tickets for Friday at 7 and Saturday at 6 for games 1 and 2 between these two teams. We'll get to the matchup in a second, but obviously the Ice had a real test in round 2. They took care of Saskatoon 4 straight in round number 3. What's the last week been like for the Ice as they prepare to play a team that just finished off their opponent last night?
Well, I think it was nice that they went through this after round 1 because they got through Medicine Hat in 4 games, right? So that was kind of their first little test of how you deal with a layoff going into a big series, and they were able to do it. Moose Jaw's good, and you and I have talked about this for a long time. They could have easily been in this scenario getting ready to be in the final 2 as well. But, Winnipeg's depth at the end of the night was able to play out, and they won it in 6. So they do have that experience. I think it was great for not only the players, but the coaching staff to kind of manage the days and figure out how they wanted to handle it, maybe what they liked about their downtime after round 1 and maybe what they wanted to do a little bit different. So the schedule against Saskatoon, we wrapped up on Wednesday. We got back here around 8 o'clock the next morning. Players had a couple of days to themselves just to kind of get acclimatized again. I know it's only an hour time change, but when you bus overnight, you get a bit of sleep, but you don't really. So Thursday was a good day for the players to kind of probably sleep most of the day. I think most of us did have intermittent naps. And then, Friday they were able to kind of kick back as a team and watch a little Stanley Cup playoff hockey. And then Saturday, Sunday, they were right back into the rink here doing both on and off ice work. And we got going on Monday, and here we are into Tuesday already, looking forward to Friday. So it lightened the load a little bit for sure, but both Winnipeg and Seattle now have gone through 14 playoff games. Seattle had a bit of a shorter schedule in their first 2 rounds, and then they had to go 6 against the Blazers, and Winnipeg's played the same number of games. So I think by the time we get to Friday night, both teams will be charged up again and ready to go.
So tell us about this matchup. I mean, Jet fans are very familiar with Brad Lambert, who joined that team and has had great success since moving to the Western Hockey League from the Moose earlier this year. But when you look at that Seattle team, I mean, there are plenty more first rounders and top level talents than just the Lambo on the Visitors.
Yeah, there's a ton of talent all the way through. They've got 10 drafted NHL players on their current roster. They had 7 players that played at the World Junior Hockey Championship. Obviously, Brad Lambert played for Finland, but they had 6 members of Team Canada, including starting goaltender Thomas Milish. When you put these 2 teams down on paper, if you kind of go 1-1, 2-2, 3-3 all the way through, you get to the D. Like, it's 2 evenly matched teams. It's the collision course we've been waiting for right now. So if you want to look at, Brad Lambert's obviously their number 1 center. They've got Reed Schaefer, who was involved in that Matthias Ekholm trade from Nashville to Edmonton. Schaefer was an Edmonton pick. Now he's property of the Predators. So I think that shows the high regard they have of him. Dylan Guenther started the year with the Arizona Coyotes, and he's gone back now to the Western League to finish off this year. I think he played 33 games for the Coyotes before coming back to the Dub.
He scored the OT winner for Canada in the World Juniors, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Kyle Krinkovic's a veteran player that played with the Saskatoon Blades for the majority of his career. So Ice fans and junior hockey fans know what he's all about. You've got the 3 kids that played alongside Zach Benson at the top prospects game earlier on this year. So not only do you have drafted players already, but there's 3 guys there, and obviously Benson for us that is going to be part of the draft coming up this summer, coming up in Nashville. So there's players all over this roster. I know the Free Press and the Winnipeg Sun were down here this morning. Josh and Scotty were here, and we were kind of going through all the rosters with head coach James Patrick, and it's quite the matchup of players that are here that we're going to get a chance to see coming up this weekend before a lot of these guys turn pro as early as next year.
Well, and of course, as far as the home team goes, we talked a lot about Zach Benson, who is almost assuredly going to hear his name called in the top 10 in Nashville. But it was a top 10 pick from last year in Matt Savoy, who joined us on WST a week or two ago, that has been absolutely on fire right from the get-go. WHL Player of the Week just announced last week. I mean, Munzy, fill us in for people that maybe haven't seen on what has been clicking for the Winnipeg Ice and the guys that have really been carrying the mail for the team all the way to this championship final.
Yeah, I think, Huss, the biggest thing I'd say about them right now is they're consistent, right? Like, you don't see a lot of ebbs and flows in this team. And I think back of it, and probably the most important part, is the way they handled that adversity in the Moose Jaw series. Again, the Warriors, gave them a good challenge in round 2. Some people thought that should have been the Eastern Conference Championship series, but it wasn't, obviously. The Blades had a better regular season, so, they were able to kind of get their way through to round 3, and Winnipeg caught them where they just kind of ran out of gas. They had some key injuries, and the Ice were able to take advantage of that. So you look at Matt Savoy, who had 27 points in 14 games. You look at Zach Benson, who had 12 points in 10. Connor McLennan's kind of the third man on that trio, who's got 13 goals in the 14 games that he's played for. And, those three have been really dynamic together for a lot of the back half of the season here. And then the other big part of it right now is, you've got the supporting pieces on each side, but you've got Zach Ostapchuk, who was a member of that gold medal winning team for Canada, the World Juniors, and you've got Connor Geekie down the middle. And when you can go 1, 2, 3, bring those guys off the bench, and then not forget about a guy like Briley Wood, who's such an important piece on that fourth line that scored the game-winning goal against Saskatoon in Game 4 to get them the 3-2 victory over the Blades. They're getting contributions from everybody. So that to me has been a huge reason why they're 12-2 right now in the playoffs.
What do we know about the goaltending matchup? We certainly know the guy that's going to be going for the ice. All he does is win. What about the other side?
Yeah, Thomas Milic, Canada's gold medal winning netminder, right? And you look at the numbers that he's been able to put up through the 14 games Seattle has played. Like, he's 12-2, so he's played every minute so far. Scott Ratzlaff, who's one of their draft-eligible netminders that will be selected coming up this summer in Nashville, hasn't played a minute of playoff hockey yet. Milic has been the guy all the way through. His goals against us right now is 1.85, and his save percentage sits at .934. So they haven't given up a lot through their first 3 rounds of the playoffs, and that's what's going to be a lot of fun, because Daniel Hauser's done the same thing through the 3 years that Winnipeg hockey fans have watched him 10 net here for the Winnipeg Ice. So it's a fantastic matchup in net. Neither guy's really big. Like, they're two players that are kind of on the smaller end of netminders that maybe you're used to seeing now. So it's going to be a lot of fun in the blue ice for sure.
You know what is interesting, and it stands out? You mentioned Milic was, the Canada goalie, and Hauser, has just been putting up ridiculous numbers ever since he showed up here. A battle of undrafted goalies as well.
It is. And tell you what, my inbox has been flooded here over the last 24 hours since we found out that Seattle was coming in, because the scouts wanted to kind of wait and see who it was going to be. There would have been interest as well for Kamloops, but they know they've got a chance to watch the Blazers coming up at the Memorial Cup because they're the host team. But to have these two, you could say it's the best of the West against the beast of the East. And, these lineups are locked and loaded, and there's going to be a ton of NHL scouts in the building. And it's the last kind of team standing here right now in Western Canada other than the Oilers. So it's going to be a ton of fun.
Hey, just before we go up, how's our pal Jeep doing? James Patrick, head coach. I'm sure he's excited. They've worked all season long to get to this. You kind of mentioned what the team has been doing behind the scenes to prepare for this series, but what does he have to say about the matchup against Seattle? And interested in what he thought of the move to the bigger venue to pack some more fans in, hopefully behind the home team on the weekend.
Yeah, I think the entire coaching staff is excited about it. They're busy. They're just on the other side of the computer here right now, on the other side of the wall, pouring through their video and getting their preparations, because as we all know, they've had a week now without kind of knowing. Yep. So I think there's been a lot of prep done for two teams where now they can kind of throw away the Kamloops stuff or maybe put it in the other shelf and hopefully need it in a couple of weeks when you're getting ready for the next round if they can get by Seattle here. But the singular focus is for sure on the Thunderbirds. And Huss, you've been around a team. You know how much goes on behind the scenes. And there's no secrets anymore with all the video that's out there. They can watch all the games. They can break it down shift by shift. They can go through the special teams. And there's a lot of long hours right now for James Patrick and Terrace McEwen for sure. And obviously for Larry and Byron working with the club too.
Well, and of course you mentioned Kamloops. They are not done yet because they are the host of the Memorial Cup. And, I think all three of those teams very worthy of playing in the event. But it'll be Kamloops, but it's only going to be one of Winnipeg or Seattle. And it's whoever that's left standing after what should be a great best of seven. I know it's going to be a real busy week for you, Munzie, but we're going to be all over it. We'll talk a little bit more about the matchup with Chris Peters a little later on. And good luck to the fellas. Looking forward to being there on the weekend. It should be a great atmosphere for an awesome series that gets going on Friday night at 7.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's been a long time coming. This organization's been kind of building to this point. And now that we're here, I'd like to fast forward the clock a little bit, to be honest with you. I wouldn't mind Friday maybe coming up maybe in the next 24 hours. But as I say that, there's a lot to get done by that point too. So we'll look forward to seeing a jammed building downtown this weekend for sure.
Yeah, I guarantee everyone in the business office is happy that they've got a couple extra days of everything that comes from changing the venue like that. But hey, it's going to be awesome. We'll be there. I know tons of people excited in the chat for it, and we'll be getting ready for puck drop. And it's going to be so gorgeous over the next couple days too.
Yeah.
It's sort of that. You know what? That's that playoff weather. When when you're making it and you're playing when it's 26 and 27 outside, that you've had a good playoff run, and it's exactly what both of these teams had. Brian, thanks so much for doing this, and all the best to the Ice on the weekend.
All right, Huss. Thanks for the support. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. There is Brian Munz. And again, go to the Ice website, click on that link. Tickets are on sale now for the games 1 and 2 at Canada Life Centre, announced yesterday just after we finished up the program. We'll talk a little bit more about this with Mike, as well as a number of the other stories in and around Winnipeg sports. But folks, with this gorgeous weather, barbecue season is here. And hey, if you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, groceries, and Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, our friends at Vita Health have you covered with 7 Winnipeg locations. Now, it is barbecue season, and that means it's time to get down to Vita Health and stock up on delicious Vita Market grass-fed bison and beef steaks. And the perfect thing to help you digest that red meat, Health First Prime-Zyme digestive enzymes. Symptoms like heartburn, gas, bloating, and abdominal pain after meals may be signs that you're not digesting food well. Health First Prime-Zyme can help supplement enzyme levels to help break down proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and lactose, and reduce digestive discomfort. That way you can enjoy the delicious food that you're cooking. 7 Winnipeg locations for Vita Health Fresh Market. If you can't make it down, visit their website at myvita.ca to buy online. I wanted to give a quick thanks again to the folks at the Dream Factory. Just got a great note from them thanking ourselves, Wallace & Wallace and Josh Morrissey, for the Unsung Hero program that benefited them all year. What a great charity they are. And we're hopefully looking forward to doing that again next year. Thanks to our wonderful sponsors at Wallace & Wallace, who are busy right now as Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialist, serving residential and commercial customers since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if it's time to replace your garage door or need it serviced, they're the go-to people for that too, with Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Give them a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. Find them online at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenaston. And how is the closet looking, fellas, heading into spring and summer? Well, if you need to up your menswear game with the turn of the seasons, head on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Custom suits beginning at $400, but that's just where it starts. Chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, an incredible selection of menswear accessories awaits you at F. If you're in a wedding party this summer, talk to the guys at F about a 15% discount when you get your suits there. And if you've got a 2023 high school grad that needs a suit for the big day, hook them up with a free custom shirt and tie with the purchase of a new suit, valued at about $150. 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more or make an appointment online at that's EPHapparel.com. And with this gorgeous weather coming into town over the next few days, perfect time to get your blizzard on at one of your local Nick and Nicky DQs. 4 locations with the DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. All your favorite ice cream treats, headlined by the blizzard with new summer blizzard flavors in right now. Of course, you can grab those great stack burgers if you're hungry. And if you do need a DQ ice cream cake or a blizzard cake for an upcoming event, feel free to hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll customize it however you want it for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. All right, let's get Remo back in here. And Remo, we're going to have Mike McIntyre join us in a little bit, but it was great to have Munzy on. Having worked in business offices of teams before, I was thinking about the people there behind the scenes and everything that they're doing right now that it has been confirmed that these games are moving to Canada Life Centre. A lot of ticketing work to be done, but the bottom line is this is going to be such a great series. It needs to be available to more folks, and credit to everyone that made this happen. I cannot wait for Friday.
Yeah, a lot of ticketing work. I'm sure a lot of logistics and staffing going on to make the change. So very exciting. And I did see Carter Brooks tweet out us that games 3 to 7 will be on TSN. So that's exciting as well. And yeah, if it does go, so games 1 and 2, Friday, Saturday, and if it does go to game 6 or 7, that would be May 21 and 22 here. The part that was more interesting to me, and we could talk about this for a long time, I mean, all teams on the same plane. How's that going to work? Do they have is there like blank rows in between the teams? Very
Front
interesting
and back,
to hear.
one side of the aisle for the Ice, one side of the aisle for the T-Birds, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought they would cut it in half. I guess each side, there's an Ice side and a T-Bird side. And that could
probably
be
front and back. It's probably front and back.
I don't know. We got to hear how it's going to go. Like, what if there's some bad blood? Could we see plane scraps? I think we're going to need a live camera.
Yeah, what sort of
Ice
security
T-Bird.
do we have on that flight?
Yeah.
Great questions. Well, we'll touch base with Munzy in Seattle and find out how that goes. But focus right now is on Friday and Saturday. And we'll talk about that and much more with Mike McIntyre, who joins us now, taking a minute outside and enjoying this gorgeous weather that's coming into the city for the next few days. What's good, Mike? How are you? Well, and you know what? We sort of led with that today because I was so fired up yesterday when I got the notice that this series had been moved to Max Bell. You can't hear Mike. Okay, well hold on.
I don't have a minute. No, I don't know why I didn't go in.
Oh, excellent.
Nothing on your end. Okay, now I got you in. I don't know why. I copied and pasted the wrong link or something.
Mute Town, population Mike. Nice one, Cruiser. No, Mike McIntyre is in fact with us.
He's back.
And Mike, I was mentioning right off the top that what great news for local hockey fans that this series is moving downtown. I'm sure there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'm sure there were some questions. The fact that they were selling tickets at Max Bell, made me think that obviously if the Manitoba Moose were playing, maybe this wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
But credit to everyone involved, whoever made this happen. This is a great thing for the local hockey community and obviously big for the Ice and the players who've been playing in this small rink. I mean, this championship series deserves a bigger venue and a bigger crowd than they've been able to have at the Ice Cave.
Oh, for sure. This is a big moment. And in fact, for probably a lot of these players, this might be the biggest stage they play on in their careers. A lot of these kids, I mean, some will certainly go on, potentially to pro careers, whether it's in the NHL or the AHL or other leagues. But I mean, some of these kids, this is as far as they get, right? So to be playing in the WHL Championship Series, and you look around at other markets and, they're packing buildings, double digit, in the thousands, over 10,000 in some markets. And so for sure to only have a maximum of a couple thousand here, I'm sure has been difficult to digest. But yeah, kudos to all the players in this because, look, I mean, if you boil it down, the Ice are competition in a way for True North. Certainly, I wouldn't say for the Jets product, but I mean, the Ice are in a similar price point as the Manitoba Moose. And I've written about this. There's only so much discretionary spending to go around. So for them to make this happen, and I agree, Huss. I think if the Moose were still alive in the playoffs, I don't suspect we would have seen this happen. But once the Moose did get eliminated the other night in Milwaukee, great job by everybody to make it happen. And it should certainly make for a better atmosphere. Let's hope they sell a whole lot of tickets. I mean, they're the only show in town right now, right? And you get the added bonus, of course, of it being the Seattle Thunderbirds and one of the most exciting Winnipeg Jets prospects on the Thunderbirds, along with a guy like Dylan Guenther, who started the year in the NHL and looks like a really good player. So there's going to be a lot of talent on display and a lot of reasons, I would suspect, for hockey fans to get out this weekend.
I was on with Rod Peterson earlier today. We were talking about this a little bit, and he asked me what I thought the crowd was going to be. And I've been kicking that around. Let me hit you with that one. I mean, what do you think we'll see on Friday and Saturday night for this championship series? Considering that this has just been sort of dropped on everyone, that it is downtown.
I'll set the over-under at 5,000, and I'll take the over on that. Maybe not by a ton, but I know the Moose drew around 4,000, I think, for their couple home games. And of course, those were happening around the same time, Huss, as the Jets were also playing a couple home games. So it's a little less crowded field, but of course, it's also, we're now into May. As you can see outside here, the weather's beautiful. Forecast looks great. I think they're predicting like mid to upper 20s by the weekend. So, that may be, some people may have already had plans. Maybe they're going out to the cottage, but I do think the attraction of seeing, a bona fide heavyweight junior hockey team like the Ice and another heavyweight in Seattle, and then the added bonus of being able to see a kid like Brad Lambert. And with the stakes so high, right? The winner of this goes to the Memorial Cup. This is not a first round or even second or third round series. The stakes are as high as they get in junior hockey. So I think all of that should combine to get a pretty good contingent out. Put it this way, a lot more than would have been able to pack inside Wayne Fleming had it remained there.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, I'm hoping they push to fill that lower bowl. And I'll tell you what, depending on, especially now with the series, as Remis just mentioned, games 3 to 7 being on TSN. If the team can, play well at home, and, be able to watch the series on the road, you could have a really, really good crowd with a little bit more time to sell tickets for games 6 and 7 a little later on. Kevin Kowalk saying, curious if concession prices will be Jets prices or WHL. I imagine everything will just be, I mean, it's a Canada Life Center event. I don't think
Production, right.
they're not bringing in a whole bunch of new things. I mean, it'll sort of be, although maybe if you're lucky, your Jets app will work for 25% off if you're a season ticket holder. We'll be testing that on the weekend.
We don't know the intricacies of how this deal exactly worked out, but I would be curious. Just the nosy news snoop in me would love to know what the arrangement here is. I mean, did the WHL kick something in here too to make this happen? I don't know. And, I got to think that certainly concession revenue is going to end up in True North's pockets. It's their building. They obviously have to pay their staff. But the building was going to otherwise be empty, right? It's not like they're moving concerts or...
It's got to be a win-win for everybody involved.
For sure. And, I mean, the other part of this that we don't know the answer to this, Huss, like, is this the last hurrah for the Ice in this market? I don't know. Certainly there's been speculation to that extent. And so does that, maybe get some more people out as well? The feeling that, hey, I don't know if this team's even going to be around much longer in this market to go watch. So there's a lot of storylines in play for sure. And I think at the end of the day, as you point out, it's hockey fans in this community who are the ultimate winners.
Yeah. So, folks, no excuses. If you're thinking you wanted to go, but the Ice Cave was sold out, well, it's not anymore. Tickets are on sale now for Friday and Saturday night. Let's get to last night before we get to the Jets off season. The ping pong balls smiling on the Chicago Blackhawks. And I said at the start of the show, Mike, from a Jets fan perspective, it'd be nice to be able to see Connor Bedard 2-3 times a year in the Central Division. Might not be the greatest thing having to go through him in a team that is going to be so loaded with high-end picks in a few years, considering the scorched earth nature of the rebuild that paid off in spades last night.
Chicago is absolutely primed to be a juggernaut in a few years, potentially, Huss. I mean, I'm not saying they will be next year. Connor Bedard may not have a lot to work with when he steps into that lineup next season, but the Blackhawks have a few things going for them. They already had, this is before winning the lottery last night, one of the better prospect pools, at least that's how many pundits viewed it, that they have. And part of that is because they've kind of been lousy for a few years now. Not as lousy as they were this year, but they've drafted, and certainly they're in the development stage with some of their young prospects. So there already was a feeling that the pool was fairly deep when it came to the Blackhawks. Well, now they just made an enormous splash, obviously, with landing Connor Bedard. And the other thing they have going for them, Huss, they have almost no salary commitments. And as you say, part of that is the scorched earth, Kane and Taze and all that happened there. Like, they are clearing the books. So they will be able to not only retain their own homegrown drafted and developed stars, but open the checkbook and potentially land all kinds of big free agent fish. And if you're a free agent, I mean, first of all, Chicago's a pretty attractive market, and it's rich history, and it's just a great city, and Original Six, all that. Now, though, the idea that you could also go play with one of the most exciting, up-and-coming young stars in the game, as you say, the Blackhawks, their rebuild could be on Mach speed here. And, yeah, I mean, they're in the same division as the Winnipeg Jets, so get used to it, Jets fans. We're going to probably see a lot of the Blackhawks here in the coming years.
Mike, we didn't talk going into it, but I'm interested, before everything fell the way that it did, what did you think was the best case scenario for the NHL, and what was the worst case scenario for the NHL?
Well, I think, I could almost argue that Arizona would have been the best and the worst case. I mean, if you believe that Arizona is a salvageable market, and I don't, at this point, I don't know that it is. I know Gary Bettman, as stubborn as he is, he's going to stay there as long as possible. I just feel in a lot of ways the ship, or the ships, multiple ships have sailed. But if you believe that Arizona's salvageable, certainly getting a Connor Bedard would help the cause, I guess. And, looking a couple of years down the road, maybe it helps get Austin Matthews there, right? Like when he's a free agent. But I also think having Connor Bedard play in that joke of an arena, starting his career in a college barn in front of 5,000 people in a market that cannot get its act together. I mean, it would have added kind of a Mickey Mouse element to it.
That was the worst. I'm with you 100%. And I don't think for a second that was at all a thought that would be a good thing for the NHL to have him playing way out west I completely concur, a joke of a situation. I mean, that would have been a disaster for the NHL. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, conspiracy theorists, they wanted to go to Arizona. Why would they want that? Like, there's absolutely nothing that convinces me that, I mean, unless it was their own team and they were owning it. And I mean, the only one thing I'll say is the value of that franchise would skyrocket and maybe look a lot more attractive to move to somewhere that didn't have a team. And maybe that's a good thing for the league.
Sure. I think just on paper, the best scenario would have been Vancouver, right? He's the local kid. It would have been a great story. We know that he's talked about growing up a Canucks fan, so that would have been a real marketable scenario. But I mean, in some ways, Huss, like, there's a number of teams, whether it's Montreal, obviously would have been a pretty dynamic get for them. Philadelphia, just again, their history kind of being a big market like they are, a hockey craze market. I could argue that Chicago is also the best and worst scenario. The best, again, great city, great fan base, rich hockey history, original six, and a major needle mover when it comes to the NHL in terms of, whoops, we just lost the phone there, Huss. I'm using a makeshift stand here, and we got a little gust of wind. So, a needle mover in terms of the bottom line and ratings and all that. So, but then there's the offshoot, and we're seeing that now play out in real time, right? The Kyle Beach scandal, the idea that Chicago, some people feel, were never really punished for their mishandling of that situation. A $2 million fine to the organization, which has quickly been eclipsed, in fact, doubled, maybe tripled at this point in new season ticket sales just in the last 12 or so hours. There's a feeling that a team that didn't do things the right way has now been rewarded, and that's left a bitter taste in some mouths. So I feel like it's a bit of a win, but also a lose for the NHL by having Chicago be the team.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about maximizing the star power of a player like that, I mean, I don't think that, being on the West Coast would have been a great thing for the National Hockey League overall.
Anaheim.
Like exactly. Anaheim, Arizona for sure, the Sharks. I mean, you do run the risk of having just not that accessible to the majority of fans, with the population centers over on the East Coast. That being said, Chicago works for a number of reasons. And we've talked about the history. That is a big, big market. He'll be a star immediately. And, and to use your term, I mean, he is a real needle mover. I was sort of with you. I mean, Philly, Detroit were a couple other spots that I think would have been good. And thank God he did not go to the Montreal Canadiens. That's my editorial of all of this.
Yeah.
The thought of, in 2 years, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Bedard reminding us every single day about that would have been a very tough to swallow. So
that actually might have slammed the door shut on Dubois talk, though, potentially. I don't know. I mean, if they now had a Connor Bedard, who obviously has his entry level deal, but his next contract's going to be a doozy. And maybe they, I don't know if that would have changed things. The one, though, let me just say my own little dark horse, a team that I was kind of rooting for, Huss, that nobody talks about. And man, did they ever get shafted last night, was Columbus.
Oh,
I've been to Columbus a number of times. It's a great town. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
I know people don't think much of Columbus, and look, they haven't really accomplished anything. But I'll say this about the Blue Jackets. They didn't deliberately tank this year the way the Blackhawks did. They were hit by an incredible run of bad luck and injury, and yet they still played hard and they competed. And they've got some nice pieces there. Obviously, Patrick Laine, Johnny Gaudreau. They got Zach Werenski, who like missed the whole year basically on the blue line. And he could have been like, that's a good market. It really is. And a guy like Connor Bedard in Columbus could have, instantly vaulted that franchise onto the map. When right now they're kind of an afterthought, and they were an afterthought on the broadcast last night when they spoiled the fact that they weren't even in the final two. And how bad did you feel for their watch party that was going on?
Oh, what a mess.
It just disappeared from the screen, right? It's like, oh yeah, those guys are gone and forgotten.
Just move it right out. A live removal of the Columbus watch party from it. So Bedard's going to be a Blackhawk. In all likelihood, Adam Fantilli will go to Anaheim and be the next member of the Ducks. And then the Blue Jackets will have a very interesting decision. And Chris Peters is going to join us a little later on. He's sort of speculating that Michkov might go 3 to the Blue Jackets, considering where they are. They might have the opportunity to take that big swing and basically wait a little longer for a player that might have the highest upside out of Connor Bedard. I think we just lost Mike. We'll try and reconnect with Mike right away on that. Of course, we will get to, I'm interested in what Mike had to say about that ugly performance by the Oilers last night. A great start. You get a break with Laurent Brossoit getting injured, and then Aiden Hill comes in and just absolutely shuts the door. And the Vegas Golden Knights very clearly the best team in that matchup last night. We don't know who the goalie for Game 4 is. Of course, Stewie Skins got yanked last night. Jack Campbell did come in, his second appearance. Now, when Jack Campbell went in earlier in the playoffs, backstopped the team to a big comeback win against the Los Angeles Kings, he still is a possibility. I think they maybe go back to Skinner, but at the same point, I think that there certainly is a possibility that we could see Jack Campbell at some point in this series, if not starting game number 4. That game's tomorrow night, and what a big night we've got. It's going to be Leafs early facing elimination, and then the Oilers playing a little later on. We've moved indoors and have Mike returning. Quick audible.
I literally overheated, Huss. My phone, I was doing it on my phone in the backyard. I guess it was getting a little too much direct sun. And I'm kind of like Rick Bowness after Game 5. I overheated. And we lost the connection. So, yeah, we've had to take it inside here.
Well, it's good to have you back. And, I mean, you mentioned Rick Bowness. I mean, let's sort of transition over to the Jets. I mean, there wasn't a lot of Jet suspense yesterday. We're just waiting to see if Florida moves on to that Final Four for final confirmation of the Jets draft pick. And certainly the scouts are working right now and putting their finishing touches on their list. But I imagine the draft in itself is probably pretty low down on Kevin Cheveldayoff's daily to-do list right now.
Agreed. That's not to say that his, amateur scouting department isn't working hard, but you're right. There's a lot of other things that he's got to check off. And, whether or not the Jets have additional draft picks when it comes to getting to Nashville at the end of June, or, what players are on the roster, what holes they might have. There's a lot of question marks for sure. The fact is the Jets, I believe it's now they're going to draft 18th or 19th, right? I think it's one of those two, depending on if it's Florida that.
Wouldn't it be 17th?
Or it could be 17th, right? If Florida beats Toronto, the Jets should be hoping for Florida to beat Toronto because it does bump them up. And we know it's a deep draft, so there's the potential to get a really good player at 17. But look, the player they're getting if it's 17 or 18, that player is not going to help them win next season, probably a few seasons away.
Oh, it will be 18, by the way, because the Jets actually had more points than the Panthers and the Islanders.
Okay.
Islanders are out, so Islanders I think you can put in at 17, And assuming the Florida Panthers win, the Jets will be on the clock at 18.
Yeah, and then if Florida doesn't win, I believe Florida jumps ahead of Winnipeg and Jets will get 19. So whether it's 18 or 19, again, they should be getting a good player, but not one that's going to help them immediately, and not one that's going to solve any of Kevin Cheveldayoff's long list of issues that he has with his team, Huss. And so, I mean, I think the order of his to-do list, to me, I think it starts with Connor Hellebuyck and getting some clarity as quickly as possible on Connor Hellebuck's situation. And, isn't it interesting, Huss, as teams kind of fall by the wayside here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, goaltending is always such a big storyline in the playoffs, right? And you wonder, are there potentially additional teams that maybe we didn't have in the equation that now could suddenly be in the market for a goaltender based on maybe some disappointment of how their season played out? And one team I throw out there is a team like Boston, which is crazy because they got the guy that's probably going to be the runaway winner of the Vezina, and they had the best goals against in the league. But, there's a lot of feeling like where they came short ultimately against Florida was in the goaltending department, which is not what anybody would have expected. I think there's teams like Los Angeles. Again, they put their hope on Jonas Korpisalo's shoulders, and that didn't really work out. So are the Kings a potential suitor? Because they got a lot of other great pieces in place. I go back to a team like the Red Wings, obviously where there's the hometown fit for Hellebuyck. I just wonder if there's a lot more teams than maybe we're even thinking of, even like the Colorado Avalanche. And maybe the Avalanche now, maybe they also need a center, Huss. They probably did to begin with, and then they got the brutal news today about Landeskog. And so you wonder now as we turn our sights to guys like Dubois and Scheifele, like are the Avalanche potential suitors? And so, again, I think if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, you're open for business. You have to be. And I would imagine that if he hasn't already, that he's going to be spending a lot of time on his phone in the coming weeks, listening to offers. He should be.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Just by the way, if you had missed that, Gabe Landeskog will miss all of next season after injury that cost him this year. Good thing he got that cup ring when he did. And that's a popular, respected player, but a huge blow to Colorado. And they really missed him.
He may be done.
Oh,
he may be done for good. Yeah,
absolutely. They really missed him this year.
Yeah.
On the ice, in the room as the captain as well. So Mike, back to the Jets. I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I think the first thing that happened is they talked to Connor Hellebuyck and see the realistic nature of an extension. And if that isn't the case, then you start figuring out what might be the best move. And I think from a Jets perspective, and this maybe isn't unique to Hellebuyck, but the players that with 1 year left, maybe allow them, or at least get a list of teams they would be open to extending with, because you're obviously in a better situation if you're trading a player knowing that he's going to be there long term, as opposed to for just 1 year. So that's going to be happening with Hellebuyck. The conversations I'm sure will happen with Dubois. Not a lot of optimism that anything good happens when it comes to him signing long term. But I do want to know, do you think the Winnipeg Jets will engage Mark Scheifele and his agent and talk about an extension, or do you think that's not in the plans from a Jets perspective?
Well, I think they'd at least engage for sure. And I do wonder how fruitful that is based on Connor Hellebuck's answer. Like if they go to Mark Scheifele and say, Connor Hellebuck wants to stay here, what about you? If that's something that would change his tune. Now, there's certainly the argument to be made that, maybe a change of scenery is best for both parties when it comes to the Jets and Scheifele, since when we talk about some of Rick Bonus's frustrations with this core, and you go back to both Paul Maurice and Dave Lowry's issues, I think a lot of the finger pointing goes towards Mark Scheifele and the feeling like, are we just spinning our heels here and kind of the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. But I think if you're the Jets, you're at least listening to what Scheifele and his camp would be looking at, what they think his next contract, which, is his last big contract given his age, what that would look like. I also wonder, Huss, if there's not the potential for a sign-and trade, which we don't see happen a whole lot in the NHL. But one thing the Jets can do is offer that additional year, right? Because players like, whether it's Dubois or Hellebuck or Scheifele, they're under team control right now. So if those guys are looking for a max 8-year deal versus 7 years, which is what the max they could get if they were to be traded to a team and then sign, could the Jets, and that's where, to your point, it would behoove the Jets to find out, both from the player's perspective, but also then from the team's perspective around the league, who might be interested, because that's how you drive the price up, right? That's how you get a better return. If teams know they're not just getting a 1-year rental, but a long-term foundational piece, certainly the return would reflect that kind of investment.
Mike, we're obviously spending a lot of our time talking about Hellebuck. We're talking about the two centers. I mean, those are the real hot spots and the brightest lights, if you will. But there's a lot more that is going to need to be figured out before we get to training camp next year and really the start of the season when roster decisions have to be made. How do you see things shaking out on the blue line, considering talented young players on the Manitoba Moose, the likes of Declan Chisholm, Leon Kavanka, Billy Hainala, who will not be waiver exempt next year?
Yeah, and if you're the Jets, you just can't have Johnny Kovacevic, part 2 or 3 or 4 with any of those guys that you've invested in, drafted and developed. I mean, Billy got a tiny little sniff this year. Declan Chisholm and Leon Gavanke didn't get a whiff. And Leon Gavanke's never gotten so much as a whiff with the team, and he just scored 20 goals again in the AHL, right? So you got to think there'd be teams around the league that would be willing to give a guy like that a look. And I got to think, what happened with Johnny Kovacevic in Montreal must have other teams going, what are the Jets doing there in Winnipeg? And, what other gems might they have that they're not willing to give a chance to, but we could certainly utilize. So that's where I think, it really becomes apparent that the Jets need to look at their blue line, take a long, hard look at it. Nobody's coming off the books this year. There's no UFAs on that blue line. So there's no job opening that's happening just kind of naturally. The only job opportunities would come if Kevin Cheveldayoff creates them by moving a player or two. And so we come back to some of the same names that we've talked about, right? Nate Schmidt. Is there anybody out there that would be willing to take Nate Schmidt's contract? This is a guy that at one point, this year, Rick Bowness healthy scratched, who was primarily a third pairing defenseman who's making almost $6 million.
That's the least likely contract as far as it's the least movable. I'll say that.
Unless you really incentivize it for somebody. Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, who I believe only has one more year left. And then, depending on what they do with him, and obviously Neil Pionk. I think we keep coming back to Neil Pionk as a piece that might have some trade value, given what he can do. And I'll say this, Haas, Neil Pionk didn't hurt that angle with his play. I thought he was really good in the playoffs. After a pretty tough regular season, Neil Pionk wasn't the reason the Jets lost to Vegas in the first round. He was one of their best players. And when Josh Morrissey went down, I thought he really elevated his game. So could they turn Neil Pionk into something that helps the team, in another area, but also almost addition by subtraction, takes salary off the books and creates a job opening for one of those young defensemen that you're at risk of losing for nothing And I guess the alternative, Huss, if you're not going to create a job opening for one of those young players, maybe then you got to look at moving one of those young players to at least get something, whether it's a draft pick, in next month, but just so you don't have Johnny Kovacevic repeat itself, because that's just a bad look when you've invested the time and resources into developing a guy, and then you try and send him down, and another team not only pounces on that guy, but turns him into kind of a regular contributing member, as the Habs did.
Well, the thing is, and I mean, I know a lot of people make a big deal out of this. I had a bunch of people that were freaking out because Axel didn't get an extra game to be qualified. I mean, there are a reason why there are these waiver rules. And,
Sure.
You can only have so many players. And listen, there's a lot of players that are not good enough to play on playoff teams that can go in and play a regular shift on teams that stink. And that basically is how the entire waiver process works. So,
and I mean, the Axel thing, to me, I know some made a big deal because they compared it to the Comrie thing. To me, Axel Janssen-Fjällby's roster spot is more valuable at this point than Axel Janssen-Fjällby. So the fact that they came one game short of retaining his rights as an RFA.
They sent him to the Moose. It was quite clear that,
Yeah.
and I mean, you could have, listen, I actually was quite a fan of Axel and thought that he was, a good player. And I probably would have had him play more than the coach did and probably wouldn't have had him sent down. But organizationally, it was pretty clear that they'd made their decision. And this was also a guy that came here on waivers. It's very different when you put the amount of work into developing a Heinola, Declan Chisholm, Leon Gavanka. I mean, to me, those players are in a very different category, even than Johnny Kovacevic was, considering the other guys in that group right now. And you're exactly right. I mean, there needs to be a spot or two opened up so there is an opportunity. Or if that is not going to happen, you better not be left holding the bag and getting nothing for them. And I think those moves would be made heading into the draft
Agreed.
in Nashville at the end of next month.
Yeah, one way or the other, Huss, you got to clear at least a little bit of that log jam. But whether it's moving a big piece or a smaller piece, I think you have to move a piece or two to try and alleviate that. And especially to go back to your point about the younger guys, it'd be one thing if you were a team like Vegas or the Rangers or whatever, the big lucrative market that you can just go sign. You can sign players till your heart's content because your team sells itself. The Jets are not that team. Their bread and butter is supposed to be drafting and developing. They can't afford to just have drafted and developed players walk for nothing. And if that's happening with any frequency in Winnipeg, the organization is in big trouble. That's not part of their DNA. And so they lost two players last year in Kovacevic. Eyssimont wasn't a drafted and developed guy. He's a guy they went out and signed, who obviously now Tampa's turned him into a 2-year extension. That looks like the Jets kind of missed the boat. I thought they could have used Mikey Eysimont's kind of heart and energy in the playoffs. A lot of what Rick Bowness seemed to be blasting his team's lack of is what Mikey Eyssimont was full of. But again, not a drafted and developed guy, but the guys you just talked about on the Moose, and we're getting close to crunch time in terms of their scenarios. I think you got to try and alleviate that jam for sure.
Well, Mike, great stuff. Next week, we will talk about what the ask will be for one of the centers if they are on the block and they are being moved. What makes sense for the Winnipeg Jets to get back? And probably not a topic that's going to go anywhere anytime soon before we head down to Nashville. Mike, thanks for doing this as always. Enjoy the weather outside.
Yeah, you bet. Take care.
Great stuff. Week. There is Mike McIntyre. Well, speaking of this gorgeous weather, the Goldeyes are beginning their series, or their season, I should say, on the road in a couple days. Out on the road playing a little preseason action right now. But opening day in the league coming up Thursday, and then the following Friday, May 19th, is Goldeyes' home opener. We'll check in again with Andrew Collier a little later on this week. In the meantime, get on down to goldeyes.com. Check out season tickets, mini packs, group tickets, and get your individual tickets as well, in particular for opening night, Friday, May 19th, down over at Shaw Park. And, Our friends at Princess Auto, big sponsors of the Bombers and proud supporters of the Winnipeg Goldeyes, and really all things Winnipeg, including Winnipeg Sports Talk. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Visit them in store, 2 Winnipeg locations, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Well, it's time to be getting outside, folks. And if you have irrigation needs on your property, Joe and the gang down at Consolidated Supply are ready for you. The leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf as well, and golf carts, both new and used, as the official exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. They've got other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchen options, and of course, small engine parts and repair. Head on down to 1395 Niagara Road East at the new Consolidated Supply showroom, which is open to the public, or you can find out more online at their relaunched website at cte.ca. Royal Sports is Manitoba's #1 sports superstore with the biggest selection of licensed team gear featuring the Jets and Bombers, NHL, NFL, and tons of new Jays and Major League Baseball gear with the season underway. But spring is here, and it's not just for the fans, it's also for the athletes. Whether you need soccer equipment and gear, baseball, softball, tennis, and more, it's all coming in by the day at Royal Sports, not to mention a huge selection of bikes. See it for yourself in person, 750 Pembina Highway. Give them a follow on Instagram as well at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Couple more games in the National Hockey League playoffs tonight, couple more in the NBA as well, and no better place to get together with friends for the big game than your local Boston Pizza, enjoying ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and the latest from the BP feature menu, which has been powered by Fanalytics, including the new fried dill pickle spears and the new triple play combo. If you're staying in, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, we've talked a lot about Bedard going to Chicago. What does the rest of the draft look like now that the lottery balls have spoken? Let's welcome in. Always love catching up with Chris Peters, the draft analyst and expert for Flow Sports, who joins us now to talk about last night's draft lottery, a look ahead to his first mock draft, and get his thoughts on the Ice and Thunderbirds WHL Championship Series. Peters, what's going on, man? We finally know how the ping pong balls have gone, and the Blackhawks are on the clock for Connor Bedard.
Holy smokes. I mean, what a shocker. What a weird night it was. And Hustler, it's great to be back with you. It's always fun to do the show. But I mean, watching, the draft lottery, I have no dog in the race. Like, true, full disclosure, I grew up a Blackhawks fan. I grew up in Chicago, wearing a White Sox hat, the Chicago Stadium behind me. I definitely, but like, since I started in hockey, the fandom kind of subsides, and especially, but I'm watching the draft lottery, not with nervousness for the Blackhawks or anything else, but just plain nerves. It's a kind of a dramatic thing. And then we have our little flub in the middle with the Blue Jackets. So did they get the pick? Did they not? All this other stuff that happened. And then it ends with the Chicago Blackhawks, which I think, the entire league, basically the only people that wanted to see the Chicago Blackhawks get Connor Bedard were the people that work for the Blackhawks and their fans, and that's it. It seemed like this was like it was met with the loudest possible groan from the hockey world, I think. But at the same time, now the Chicago Blackhawks, they move on from Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, and they slide right into the Connor Bedard era. You can't get luckier than that, I don't think.
No, there's no doubt about that, and I'll add the NHL head office to this. I mean, I really think that it would have been an abject disaster if the Coyotes had gotten Connor Bedard. I mean, having this young superstar playing in his 4,000-seat rink, albeit in although it might have made the franchise a lot more valuable to potentially move it. I guess that's one thing. And then, the Ducks, being out there on the West Coast, you'd really be missing him for a lot. So I think there's a lot of things that work for Chicago. Obviously, there's still the baggage from the entire Kyle Beach situation. And many people think they shouldn't have even been picking in the first round, never mind getting it. And I guess the other thing, Chris, is this does prove in a lot of ways that sometimes a full-fledged tank is worth it in the case of Connor Bedard, because that's exactly what Chicago did. And even though they didn't finish last, the Bulls smiled on them last night.
Oh, absolutely. Unbelievable situation. And yeah, I mean, tanking can work. It doesn't always, I mean, there have certainly been times we saw, the Buffalo Sabres and the Arizona Coyotes in a full out tank for the Connor McDavid draft. And then, they end up, the Coyotes end up picking third in that draft. So, it was a pretty wild, wild experience to see the way that worked. But to your point, Connor Bedard going to an American market, a large media market, a media market that has a hockey history in a lot of ways is good for the NHL. Just to have that player. Obviously, you have Connor Bedard, your Connor McDavid in Edmonton, Austin Matthews in Toronto, which is fantastic for the Canadian hockey markets. You don't have that necessarily those massive star appeal in the U.S., which is a large share of the media market. So in the end, I think it's probably a net positive for the league, but at the same time, I could completely understand the frustration of fans to see a team that won 3 Stanley Cups, go into that tank mode, and then all of a sudden they end up with the top pick. I mean, and I know they've said that tanking doesn't really exist, but I mean, you look at the Blackhawks roster and it's a shadow of its former, no DeBrincat, no Taves, no Kane, none of the guys that were part of the glory years. And of all the teams that were in the lottery, I feel like Chicago has the furthest to go of all of them, just because of where they're at in their status of rebuilding.
Yeah, from a Winnipeg perspective, I mean, I guess selfishly it'll be great to see Bedard here 3 times a year. Although from a Jets fan perspective, I'm not sure in a few years we're going to want to be dealing with him and the Blackhawks with all the picks that they have in the playoffs each and every year. But, I mean, certainly an original 6 team in the Central Time Zone. I think we will have this superstar getting a bit more exposure than you might have in some of the other spots. So just before we move on to kind of where everything else shut down or everything else ended, you've followed this young man for a long, long time. We're going to be talking about him nonstop until we hear his name called in Nashville next month. Where does Connor Bedard, in your mind, Chris, rank with most generational prospects we've seen over the last 20, 25 years, including the likes of McDavid and Austin Matthews and, of course, Sidney Crosby?
Yeah, I think in terms of pure goal-scoring talent, let's just take that aside, best since Ovechkin. That includes Steven Stamkos. That includes, John Tavares was a 70-plus goal scorer in junior. We've seen guys like Cole Caulfield scored 70 goals. I mean, these are the players. So, I mean, that's a long term. You look at Alex Ovechkin in the almost 10 or 20 years since he was drafted, and we're talking that's the level of goal scoring ability that I think Connor Bedard has. In terms of overall game, I don't think that we can compare him favorably to Connor McDavid. I mean, I think part of the video package said he skates like McDavid, shoots like Matthews. He doesn't skate like McDavid. Nobody in the world does. But he does. He has so many tools. So, I think that there's a really good case for him to be the best since McDavid. I think, Austin Matthews is certainly in that mix too. He has a different size profile, and obviously he's got a 60 goal season. It's hard to say that, but, I think that we're looking at a player here in Connor Bedard that has the opportunity to be, a franchise-changing prospect for one, and then also, a perennial all-star, future Hall of Famer, a guy that's probably going to win some Rocket Richards, a guy that might win a few Hart trophies, and a guy that's probably going to be winning some Stanley Cups. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he's been able to find some success. I mean, Regina, they didn't have a great team around him. He almost willed them through the first round of the playoffs, 20 points in 7 games. So this is a guy that's built for the bright lights, for the biggest moments. I think that that's the other thing that really impresses me about Connor Bedard in a way that I don't think we've seen before. Like, this is a guy that didn't shy away from anything at all. Like every media opportunity, every autograph session, every chance to go skate with kids on a weekend. I mean, this guy was never tired. And I've seen first overall picks kept in a bubble. I've seen them kept away from the media, away from the spotlight. Connor Bedard has not, I wouldn't say that he has embraced the spotlight, But what he has done is he has handled it, and he is continually elevated. And so that, to me, is what makes him very special. I mean, you look at the guys that we've had come through the league, and you now see the Nathan McKinnons and, the Connor McDavids, the Austin Matthews, Jack Hughes now getting to that level, Cale Makar. I do think that Connor Bedard has a chance to be in that tier of player going forward. And, he idolized Sidney Crosby. I think that Sidney Crosby was such a unique prospect in a lot of different ways as well. So he's kind of, it's tough for me to say that that Bedard will be better than Crosby, but, I think that he's in that tier, that conversation of Bedard. We're going to talk about them in the same sense: McDavid, Bedard, Crosby, those kind of guys. And even if he ends up with let's say a Patrick Kane or a Steven Stamkos like career, still a Hall of Famer. So there you go.
A couple rings in both of those guys' jewelry boxes, that's for sure. And it is fascinating. And I guess a big part of it, I mean, we knew that there was this generational player, Connor Bedard. However, we also knew that this was in a really, really deep draft. So, and I was so excited when I was getting ready to have you on today. I saw the first mock draft of the year. It's all ready to go over at Flow Hockey, folks. Check it out. We'll have a link in the description. Adam Fantilli from Michigan for the Ducks. How quality of a consolation prize, if I could use the term, is Fantilli to a team like Anaheim?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this draft has mirrored in so many ways the McDavid Eichel draft, where it was like, hey, we've got two amazing players here. One is clearly the number one, but the number two in pretty much any other year is a number one. I mean, we've only had it's amazing too, because Fantilli also won the Hobey Baker like Jack Eichel did, and actually had a higher points per game average this year. And so, he's going to the World Championship too, which I think is going to boost his, just kind of his profile. And it also will give him a great learning experience alongside some of the NHL players that he's going to play with. But, I think that I've been saying it all year, like, he's not a consolation prize. He is a franchise centerpiece, and that's what I think he can be. If there's a difference between, there are a number of differences between the players, obviously. I mean, you've got a different size profile with Adam Fantilli. He's fast, he is physical, he plays mean, and then he's got that skill. I think there's probably a gap in the hockey sense department between the two players, which is another separating factor for Connor, who doesn't have the size, but he has that offensive sense and all those different things. But I mean, watching Adam Fantilli grow over the last 3 years, played in the USHL with the Chicago Steel, and then moved to Michigan, we've seen that progression with him too. And to the point where he became a dominant player, an unstoppable player in college hockey. And success at the level that he's had it at the college level is not, it doesn't guarantee him NHL success, but the guys that are in that category have, Kyle Connor is one of them, that they've had a high level of NHL success. I fully believe that Adam Fantilli can be a number one center in the NHL, at worst a number two, but I really think that he's got the potential to be a play driving first line center. And that's, for the Ducks, another centerpiece for them in a host of young talent that have high end skill.
Chris, the Blue Jackets got the bad news a little early from Kevin Weeks. They are picking third. And, in your draft, in your mock, you've got them taking Matvei Michkov, who is less of a household name than the other two. Certainly Bedard could potentially be a talent that rivals Bedard, depending on who you talk to, but it's a very different situation with the Russian. Your thoughts quickly on why you pegged him in at 3, but also the prospect he is, but the risks that come with taking a player like that and the weight.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly speculative, but I think it's based on the fact that Jarmo Kekalainen has never shied away from risk and never shied away from going outside of the box. And the issue here is that I think Matvei Michkov, coming into this season, we were talking about him in the same sentence as Connor Bedard. I mean, we've seen these two guys go head to head before, even 2 years ago at the Under-18 World Championship when they were both underage players, and that allowed us to see them up close. And really the trajectory has been similar. The difference is that Michkov is playing in Russia. He's playing in the KHL. He's playing with and against men. And then he had a really great season once he was loaned out from SKA to HK Sochi. I think he has the potential to be one of those franchise-changing, franchise-altering players. That's how good of a player I think he is. There are size concerns. He's a wing versus a center, and I think that ideally the Blue Jackets would have liked to have the first 2 picks because they desperately need a number 1 center. They really do. And so they are more likely to go in that direction. I think that it's always interesting to, Jarmo Kekalainen, he says, I'm going to go with the best player. To me, the best player by far is Matvei Michkov, and that's why I ended up putting him in that mock draft. But I mean, there are a lot of good options. You got Will Smith, you got Leo Carlsson, both of whom can play center. So there's a lot of interesting scenarios at play. And Michkov, where he goes and all the risk that comes with him because of the Russian factor, because he's got a contract until 25, 26, those are all things that you have to take into account. And the Russian factor now is also a geopolitical one. It's not just this, made up kind of our Russian players bad or, or lazy or whatever, that doesn't exist anymore. It's a much different issue. So fascinated to see where he goes.
Chris Peters with us from Flow Hockey, breaking down the draft order now and taking a look at his first mock. You've got the Coyotes taking David Reinbacher, the first defenseman at 6. You can maybe tell us a little bit about the player, but will we be seeing mostly forwards in this draft? I mean, how would you compare the quantity and quality of defense prospects to some of the offensive stars that we've been discussing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if we're going best player available, and if the Coyotes do that, I don't necessarily think they would take David Reinbacher, but their defense pool is so shallow that basically go ahead and do what you have to do to get the number 1 defenseman. They got another pick at 12 to potentially land one of those impact forwards. I think it's going to be very thin on defense in the first 12 to 15 picks of the draft. I do think that there are some guys that have emerged late that could potentially sneak into that range. I think, Axel Sandin Pellikka has been a very good defenseman all season long, played at the World Juniors for Sweden. He's, a bit undersized, but a gifted puck mover. And then also Tim Wielander, who played at the Under-18 World Championship. I think he rose his stock a great deal in that period. But as far as David Reinbacher goes, 6'2" right shot defenseman, highly productive in the Swiss National League this year. The thing about him is, there's not a ton of precedent. There's not a ton of precedent for defensemen his age playing in that league, and there is no precedent for them producing at the level that he did. He's going to play for Denmark at the World Championships. He played for them at the World Juniors. They barely ever had the puck, so it was really hard to assess him at that tournament. But in the games where they did have the puck, he was dictating play, but a big right shot defenseman with mobility and offensive skill. That's something that the Coyotes desperately need. They got Logan Cooley last year at 3. We'll see. They could potentially, go for a bigger forward, go for a forward in that 6th spot and hope that there's one of those 2 defensemen left at 12. I just don't know if there will. I think Reinbacher is the best of the group, and I don't think that they would be able to guarantee themselves getting him if they waited.
Just continuing down the board on your mock, and folks can read the entire thing over at Flow Hockey. There are 2 players with local ties. Zach Benson of the Winnipeg Ice, and we'll get to that WHL final in a second. He's pegged in at 9. And then Nate Danielson, who I think is less familiar to a lot of people, at least in the Winnipeg area, who started with the Brandon Wheat Kings, is also a top 10 pick. Just a quick comment on those 2 young men that see themselves pegged in the top 10.
Yeah, it's a great year for the WHL draft-wise, and I think these 2 players have risen, throughout the year. I think, to me, Zach Benson is I would have him in my draft rankings. He would be higher than 9. But in a mock draft, that's not what we're doing. We're trying to see where they would go. I think that the size issue for him is one of the things that's only holding him back. And that, to me, other than that, that's really the only thing. Because I his skating is fine. It's not amazing, but his compete level is incredibly high. His defensive stick is as good as any forward in this draft. I think he strips guys off pucks regularly, transitions immediately to offense, which I think is, he's just always a threat with the puck. High production level. Just love the motor that he plays with, and I think that he's got a chance to be a really good, top 6 kind of forward for a team. Nate Danielson has kind of been his draft stock has fluctuated throughout the year. I think he's a really good scorer. He's got some good offensive capabilities. There's 2-way skill there. He has size, good skating ability. I mean, he checks a lot of the boxes. He doesn't get you excited in any one thing. But, in that top 10 range, there's a lot of forwards that have, this tool or that tool. I think he has a combination of tools that allow him to be a really good all-around player, which is why, I think there's a potential that with the way that the draft board fell, he has a chance to go pretty high. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fascinating centers and guys. Are they centers? Are they wings? Those kind of things. I think there's no doubt that Nate Danielson's a center to me. And that's why I think he slots in very favorably in this draft.
Chris, before we go, we got a couple big games here in the Peg on the weekend. WHL final. Great news announced yesterday that it's moving to the big rink downtown, so there'll be plenty of room for fans to get in there. And it's a perfect storm for Jet fans because we get to see Brad Lambert playing for the visitors. And, of course, a stacked ice team. I know you've covered this league all season long. Just a quick thoughts on the Winnipeg ICE, the Seattle Thunderbirds going at it for the WHL crown.
I think we got what we wanted. Two of the best teams all season. Seattle is as star-studded a junior team as you're ever going to see. The tons of first-round picks. You mentioned Brad Lambert. Dylan Gunther. They've got Kevin Korchinski. There's so many guys up and down their lineup. But then you got Winnipeg, and you got some really good high-end draft guys that have already been drafted. Matt Savoy. All these different players, and I couldn't, it's a pick'em series for me. I think Seattle may come in a little bit on favored, but at the same time, they just loaded up so much at the deadline, to make sure and getting guys, and got lucky with Brad Lambert being sent back and all those different things. But for fans in Winnipeg, the WHL, the junior hockey, this is as good as you could possibly hope for in terms of a matchup, in terms of, a competition, and, an opportunity to see junior hockey at its absolute highest level. So many of these guys played in the World Juniors or will play in the World Juniors. And some of these guys are going to be in the NHL next season. Between these two teams, it's really tough to say who would win. But the WHL being in your backyard, this was one of the best years potentially to be there. Obviously, you have Connor Bedard, you have all these other players, but Winnipeg itself with a super team, and has been for the last two seasons. This is a great opportunity to just experience junior hockey at an emotionally high level, and in an atmosphere that I think these players are really gonna relish and rise to the occasion in. So I hope it's a great crowd. I hope that they have a lot of fun with it, because these are two outstanding teams, incredibly well built. And this is going to be a series that could go down in the history books in terms of one of the all-time greats, just in terms of pure matchup.
Chris, you should get in the whip and come up I-29 for the weekend.
I should. There's so much to do, but I should. Maybe I'll do it.
Let us know. Let us know. We'll have a cold one waiting for you if you make it here. Listen, I'm sure we'll catch up at some point before the draft and see you in Nashville. Thanks so much for doing this. And I was so fired up for the mock. We've got through it, but I'm sure there'll be a few more before we get to decision day. Although I'm pretty sure the decision's been made for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, I think that spoiler alert on that one. So yeah, so just be ready for that. But thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, and yeah, it's great to be on. So lots more draft content to come for sure. Many more mocks too. Don't worry.
Thanks, Chris. All right, great stuff from Chris Peters. Awesome to have Chris back on the program. And fired up for this Ice Thunderbird series, and very much looking forward to the next few weeks heading into the draft in Nashville at the end of June. All right, we got to get to tonight's games in the National Hockey League. Just before we do that, don't forget, live racing begins at Assiniboia Downs on May 22nd, the Monday of the May long weekend. First 2 weeks will be Monday, Tuesday racing, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday throughout the year. Find out more and get ready for the season at asdowns.com, and make a point of being there on opening night on the 22nd of May. Cannot wait to get out to the ballpark this year and enjoy a few Little Brown Jugs out on Craft Beer Corner. But if you haven't already, you got to try the new beer from Little Brown Jug, the generic lager. Your basic lager, just better, impressively standard in the best way, light and clean to taste with a mellow flavor and crisp finish. Now Manitoba can support local without having to move away from the domestic taste they've come to expect with a light beer. Pick it up at the brewery or tap room, or at vendors throughout the city, and should be in 8-packs and cans by next month at all of your local Manitoba liquor marts. Golfing news, our guy Aaron Cockrell is playing in the RBC Canadian Open coming up next month at Oakdale Golf and Country Club. Byron Nelson coming up this week, then another major just around the corner, so lots going on golfing-wise with the big boys. But Manitoba golfers are back on the courses, and everyone fired up to be back at Breezy Bend. Man, for the spring that we had, the course is in just brilliant shape right now, and got to give big credit to Craig and his great staff for making it making it look the way that it does and play the way that it does. Of course, if you're looking for a great long-term golfing home for you and your family, Breezy is an amazing place to do exactly that. Find out more online at breezybend.ca or give our pal Corey Johnson a call for more information about becoming a member. And if you like world-class fishing and world-class hospitality, you might want to consider an Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge getaway this summer, a little piece of paradise right here in Manitoba, where even including the flight in, you can be on the water in about 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. A great getaway for Manitoba businesses. Bring your top clients or maybe a great team building event, and obviously an incredible fans and family trip option as well. They're pushing 90% capacity for the summer. So if you do want to get in on the Aikens, find out more now at aikenslake.com or give our pal Pitt Terren an email at pitt@aikenslake for inquiries of all sorts for over at Aikens Lake. Let's get Remo back in here. I've got a couple games to get to on the Coolbet Lines tonight, but I got to tell you, I'm getting more excited for the draft in this next month after talking to Chris. Now that we know who's getting Connor Bedard, the dust has settled. Remo, the rest of the NHL GMs, including Kevin Cheveldayoff, can start enacting their offseason plans.
Yeah, I agree with you. We know the order. We know which franchise is going to be changed forever, Chicago. And I say that kind of say it with a lot of excitement there. So I agree. The Jets are out. We've wrapped up the regular season. Now we can begin to look ahead to the draft last week of June. So very exciting time for a lot of players and their families and franchise as well as we start to look towards next year. And great to have a chat with Chris Peters about his mock draft now that we know. And we'll be touching on a lot more draft stuff as we get closer. And I know Shane Malloy will join us as well later this week. We've had on before. So a lot of excitement, and I'm seeing some great comments in the chat. SK, Julian, they're just talking about their own projections of mock drafting. So shout out to you guys for continuing the conversation in there.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget, if you didn't know, we do have a Winnipeg Sports Talk Discord. It seems like this has really become the place that Winnipeg sports fans come together on a daily basis to hang out with us, but also talk with each other about the big stories of the day. And Remo, give a little plug for how people can find the Discord and join the community outside of live WST hours.
Yeah, well, one thing, I know a lot of YouTube channels do this is we have so much fun chatting with each other during the show. Wouldn't it be great to have a place where we can do that outside of live stream hours? So I put the link in there in the chat right now. It's in the description of this video. And hop in there, say hi, introduce yourself. I know there's a lot of intelligent comments. I want to give a shout out to Rob Mahoney, who likes to be not serious in chat and joking around, but he actually has really impressed me with his intelligent thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets in the Jets channel.
You were so shocked. You were so shocked.
So shocked. I know Rob Mahoney is a guy who likes to just rip on me in chat and makes jokes, but actually put together some really intelligent stuff there in the Jets channel. Julian as well. And a lot of fun talking about, other, live chatting during other hockey games and a number of channels for various things. Some people were talking about the Megadeth concert in the music channel. I didn't go to Megadeth, but I'm regretting it now. So, and SK says he joined many of the best chatters are in there. So yeah, I know Phyllis in there all the time. SK, Rob Mahoney, T. Will, MC Stormy in there. So a lot of fun.
Love it, love it. So if you're new around here, just finding out, click on the link, join the Discord, and keep on hanging out with the WST crew outside of live hours between 1 and 3 when we do the show on YouTube. Just before we get to the Coolbet Lines, Remo, couple things to note from the National Hockey League. King Clancy nominees have been named, one player from each team. And it is Blake Wheeler that gets the nod for the Winnipeg Jets, and former Winnipeg Jet Jacob Trouba among the 32 nominees for the King Clancy Memorial Trophy.
Yeah, well, where do you think Trouba learned how to be such a great leader? Probably from Jets captain Blake Wheeler, former Jets captain Blake Wheeler, and King Clancy Award. These are the finalists. The award recognizes leadership qualities and contributions to the community. So let's see. To the player who best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice, and made a noteworthy humanitarian contribution in his community. And I know Blake Wheeler does a lot of work with Cancer Care Manitoba Foundation.
Absolutely.
So shout out to Blake for that. And I'm curious who will get the award at the NHL Awards, which are shortly before, 2 days before the draft, also in Nashville. So a lot of names on there.
Yeah, you can check that out. As far as the games that are going tonight and tomorrow, the series that are still on, we know the Leafs are down to their last gasp trying to stay in this series against the Florida Panthers. And it sounds like it'll be the kid, Joseph Wall, that will get the start in Game 4, trying to avoid a very quick and unceremonious exit after the team finally won a playoff series for the first time since 2004.
Yeah, I mean, so much excitement, such a high, and now it kind of like deja vu here for the Maple Leafs. So that's it's almost comical, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. Big night for the Canada teams, Leafs and Oilers, and I don't know what Toronto does. Maybe they make some changes in the offseason, but it seems like they're on their way out, and I think we're all here to watch it, right, Hustler? Or maybe they win a game and then lose at home in front of their home fans.
Yeah, I'm sure Maurice would love nothing more than to win in Toronto with the extra bright lights that come with playing in the center of the universe. But hey, Maurice has done a hell of a job right now. This team is playoff ready to go. The Leafs have not had many answers for them right now. And I mean, who would have thunk that? I mean, I did pick Florida to win the series. I didn't think they'd have a chance to win it in Game 4 of the series. As far as tonight goes, let's get to Coolbet.com and check out the Coolbet lines. Devils, after that 8-goal explosion in Game 3, are back at home, favored -150 on the money line. The Carolina Hurricanes +127. And the other game tonight, the Kraken with a 2-1 series lead. Once again, a home underdog at +117. The Dallas Stars -138, Reem. And listen, I'm going to throw this out for my Coolbet play of the day for the Lock Shop a little later on the Coolbet social channels. We've seen Dallas win a crucial Game 4 on the road in round number 1 against the Minnesota Wild. They need to do that again tonight, and I'm expecting a big bounce back from Jake Ottinger after he got lit up for 4 goals in 6 minutes as that game completely got away from Dallas in the second period after Heiskanen got hurt.
Yeah, that was kind of scary, getting a puck to the face. So you'd like to think Dallas is going to rebound. I feel like the series is going 7. Now, I've picked against Seattle in every game in this playoffs, and I've been wrong a lot. So maybe Seattle is actually a value as a home dog, but
they've been that way throughout the playoffs. Yeah, that's for sure.
I feel like you'd be doing pretty good if you just bet on Seattle. I'm sure they've been an underdog in every game, but here we are. They're up 2-1, and I'm still going with Dallas. Although that's a pretty big favorite, -138.
Yeah. That being said, I'm riding with the Stars tonight. Stars +105 to win the series, despite being down 2-1. Now, we do have a Lock Shop partner parlay exclusive today. We made a lot of people happy with a 3-sport banger on Saturday. We're going to try and do it again tonight. We're going to put the Stars on this ticket. We're going to put the Boston Celtics on this ticket, who are a big favorite. And we're going to add the Jays. Now, the Jays are a plus money road underdog. Alec Manoah's on the bump going up against Aaron Nola in Philly. But it does seem like the Jays really got their groove back in Pittsburgh on the weekend. Let's see if they can keep it going and find a way to win in Philly tonight. So Jays, Celtics, Stars. When we put that in manually, it came out to +400. But Patty and Jake have helped us out. +445 right now in the Coolbet exclusives. Click on Lock Shop Partner Parlay and certainly check out everything else they've got exclusive for the NBA tonight, a bunch for the National Hockey League, and some Blue Jays daily exclusives as well. It's all there at Coolbet. Use the promo code WST if you haven't played at Coolbet before. hook you up with a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. So it's been a fun show today, Reem. Kind of aftermath of the draft lottery. Great news about the Winnipeg ICE playing downtown. Tickets on sale as well. And I think, we're going to spend quite a bit of time with some different guests over the next few days talking about this ICE series. And what a great opportunity to get a chance to see Brad Lambert do his thing after having such a successful half season and playoffs since moving from the American Hockey League Post World Juniors to the Western League with the Seattle T-Birds.
Yeah, two great teams. You want to see some quality hockey. Canada Life Center this weekend, Friday at 7, Saturday at 6. So I think that's, great move for everyone. Win-win. So exciting stuff there. And one thing about the draft lottery, Aaron Portzline was in the room, with who Frank Serval, Stephen Wino, they were among the reporters. And this is what they had to say about the little snafu there. Hold on, where was it? Thing? About the Kevin Weeks saying Columbus before the logo was revealed. Mm-hmm. He said, both Weeks and the NHL declined to comment. A source with knowledge of the situation told The Athletic a production error fed the wrong words into the teleprompter that Weeks was using, and that it wasn't just a passing comment by the former goaltender and veteran broadcaster. So someone put in the wrong thing in the teleprompter.
Yeah. He got done dirty.
Giving me images of when they put on Ron Burgundy's prompter, F-U San Diego, right? And then he read it.
By the way, did you see the guy at the Oiler game last night or the other night with the F-A and find out Evander Kane jersey?
You sent me that.
I had to laugh. The Oiler fans work fast, and
how do you get a jersey? That's like the next day you get a customized jersey.
Exactly, the natural, feeling it, making friends and new fans in Edmonton. Enjoy the games tonight. Carolina Jersey early, Dallas and Seattle late, and some good action on the hard court too if you're paying attention to the NBA playoffs. Tomorrow, rookies arrive for rookie camp at IG Field. The Bombers are back, ladies and gents. We'll kind of preview training camp later on this week, heading into the weekend when the veterans report. But man, beautiful weather outside, a championship series at Canada Life Center for the Winnipeg ICE this weekend, and Blue Bomber training camp. Gold Ice starting their season as well. Home opener next week. And May 22nd for Assiniboia Downs. It's all happening soon. Of course, the Sea Bears. We'll definitely talk Sea Bears next week and find a little bit more about the upcoming season with the gang down at the new Hoops team as they get ready for their beginning game on the 27th of May. Great stuff today. Thanks for everyone in the chat. Tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk. And if you haven't had a chance, hit that thumbs up already and make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Tomorrow on the show, we'll have Murata Tesh. We're going to head out to Edmonton. My pal from the Lock Shop, TSN host Dustin Nielsen, will join us as well. Maybe get his thoughts on the upcoming CFL season, as well as, of course, the really the voice of the Western Division on TSN. And with all this excitement about the WHL Championship Series, we're also going to check in with Eric Swar from the MJHL because the Centennial Cup is coming to Manitoba beginning on Thursday. MJHL champion Steinpack Pistons in it, as well as the host Portage Terriers. Always a great event, and there'll be some great hockey happening a little west of the city, so we'll touch on that as well. All coming up tomorrow, 1 p.m. Make it a date. We'll see you then. As I said, thanks for the support. Tell a friend about WST, and thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Enjoy the weather, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock p.m. Central on YouTube, right here on WST.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.